When we deal with inverses with our radical unit, there's either two things that are going to happen. We're either going to start with a quadratic and then find the inverse, which will give us a radical, or we start with a radical and then find the inverse of that radical. Alright, so our first example is to find the inverse of y equals x squared minus 1. So, if you remember back from the beginning of the year, or not even the beginning of the year, any type of unit we've done when we found the inverse, what I usually do is I switch x and y. So, x equals y squared minus 1, and now I solve for y. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides and get x plus 1 equals y squared. So now to undo y squared, I'm going to do the square root. So we say y, and then we do to the negative 1 because that's what shows it's the inverse, equals, and then this one's actually going to be plus or minus the square root of x plus 1. Alright, so now if you found the domain of the first one, that would have been negative infinity to positive infinity. And then the range would be negative 1 to infinity. Okay, so our range includes 1, not infinity. So now I'm going to ask for the domain of our inverse, which you'll see is negative 1 to infinity. And the connection I'm trying to make is the fact that these two are the same. The range in the original is the domain in the inverse. Alright, let's look at another problem. Alright, so if I give you y equals x squared minus 2x plus 1, I'm going to switch the x and y. Alright, so in this case we have two y's, and this can factor, so you have x equals y minus 1 squared. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides, and I actually get plus or minus square root x equals y minus 1. So my inverse is the inverse of y equals plus or minus square root x plus 1. So the domain in this is the range in our original quadratic. Our original quadratic's range was 0 to infinity. So our domain in our inverse is actually the same thing, 0 to infinity. Alright, let's look at an example where we start with a radical. Y equals x plus 7, the square root of x plus 7. I'm going to switch x and y. I'm going to square both sides. So x squared equals y plus 7. So then our inverse equals x squared minus 7. The domain of this problem, 0 to infinity, which is the range in our original problem, 0 to infinity. I'm just showing you the original range just so you can see the connection between inverses, which is a connection we already know. Okay, our last problem, y equals the square root of x plus 3. So this range, since it's up 3, is going to be 3 to infinity. So let's hope our domain in our inverse is the same. Alright, so to find the inverse, I'm going to switch x and y. I'm going to subtract 3, and then I'm going to square both sides. So the inverse of y, now this one you can actually leave in factored form. You know it's a quadratic, so our domain, since this is a horizontal shift, is 3 to infinity, just like the range before. In class, we're going to do tougher problems, but this is the base.